Hello everybody and welcome to the latest Mark 1 numbers that survive in the UK. I say survive the amount of Mark 1s that are currently taxed and on the road, because as of this moment in time, I am not focusing on SORN data. I'm merely focusing on the amount of Mark 1s remaining on the roads, because most of them that are on the roads are going to be the ones that will hopefully survive. Some of them are on SORN, being carefully and tentatively rebuilt piece by piece by their owners, while many of them, sadly, are still coming off the roads. And this is the latest data extract from the latest current data, Q3 2023. Now, the next time I come to this data will be around May time, so that will be the big data release. That's where everything gets released by the DFT, engine data, everything. So I can produce a much more accurate picture in May. But I would say what I'm about to say is about 97%, 98% accurate. But I won't know myself until May. But this is the picture with Focus Mark 1s in the UK. For those of you who are familiar with what I do, this will not come as a surprise. For those of you who are new to this, I've been doing this for a number of years. I started doing all this statistics stuff on the Mark 1 98 to 2005 Facebook group, and then after building my own group, I basically do it for that group, because most of these cars, most of the cars on the group will probably survive, because they're in the hands of people that want to look after them and don't want to mess about with them too much, and want to keep on the originality side of their cars. And I think that's what's going to keep their cars away from the crusher for the longest amount of time. And I think that's a good point, because modifications and modified Mark 1s, I think, will go the way of the wind as time goes on. There'll be less and less of them, whereas there'll be more and more original examples left. And it always will go that way, and I'll make sure it goes that way. But each their own on that one. But anyway, in terms of data, this is what is left on the roads, and it's quite stark. So I'm just going to read off some random pieces of information that I've just put on my spreadsheet. And if I'll just show you my laptop, I don't know whether that's going to show you. I don't think you can see absolutely anything because it's a dreadful screen, but that's absolutely fine. But it is a spreadsheet that is available on the Mark 1 preservation group on Facebook. I will share it with the other groups, but it depends if I can release it as an Excel document, which is mostly what it will read as. But anyway, the main one, special limited editions, let's start with them. So really, the contrasting news is the Millennium Focus, which is the rarest Mark 1 Focus of the lot today. It has always been the rarest Mark 1 edition of the Mark 1. It basically survives as a number of 42. There are 42 of them left on the roads. One of them has gone on SORN, 2 of them have been scrapped. So again, they're just going down by a few, but mainly most of them will be preserved, I think, from what I can see on the numbers. I think most of them 42 will survive, but it's still coming down a bit. The second rarest, the MP3, they have gone down by 8 to 93. 93. Nothing of that car. The MP3 is a very, very rare version. And I don't know why, because there's more MP3s that were total registered in the first place than any other special limited edition. So I don't know how that's happened, but clearly I think too many people have pinched them for the wheels. That's my inclination. And then you have the black. There's 101 left, and that's gone down by another 8. Silver, 20 of them have gone down. It's 198. Ellie, 12 of them have come off the road, 151. The ebony survives quite well. There's 235 of them, but again, we've lost about 15 of them. The edge and flight seem to be doing okay. There's more than made. There's over 2,000 of them left, but again, they keep coming down by a couple of hundred every quarter. So they are, every one of them are equally coming down at what I would predict it to be. In terms of diesel models, there are, there's two categories, the TDDI or the TDCI. The TDDI, if you want one of them, there's about 1,200 left on the roads now. They have decreased by a few hundred. The majority of them are LX versions. There's 368 of them, followed by the Gear with 313, Zetec 294 of them, and if you want a CL TDDI, 246 of them. Good luck with that. The TDCI, there's double the amount, so there's 2,269 approximately. Most of them are Gears. 50% of them are Gears, 1,116 approximately, and then the rest are split between LX and Zetecs. So Gear TDCIs tend to be the common one, but again, if you want any diesel, there's not many of them left. Automatic versions versus petrol manual versions. When these cars were first registered, the total of automatics versus because obviously you couldn't get the automatic on the diesel models, so manual versus automatic, usually 90% of the ones that were first registered were manuals and 10% were automatics. Now what I'm seeing happening is I'm seeing many of the manual cars plummeting and the automatics are not going down by the same equal length. So I do think that the percentages are changing in the favouritism of the automatics. They are very good gearboxes. People tend to look after them. You tend to find people that don't rag them. The automatic variants of a lot of classic cars survive in much more better numbers percentage-wise than the manual versions. And this is going the same way. Approximately 80% of Mark 1s remaining are manuals, 20% are automatics. So that's climbed. So they've gone up a little bit. And I do predict that in 3 or 4 years' time, that number will be about 70 to 30%. So there'll be even more automatics versus manuals. But most of them will still be manuals. But the automatics are doing very well at the moment. And my Zetec automatic is one of the most common, with about just under 5,000 of them left. If you want an LX and Gear, well, as I say, there's about 9,400 automatics left. The majority of them are Zetecs. The other 4,000 are shared between LX and Gears. In terms of manuals, well, as I say, they represent 80% of the bulk. Petrol manuals, which is the next column, the most common type of Mark 1 Focus left on the roads is a petrol manual Zetec. There are 15,005 of them left. So if you have one of them, good, you're in a very big bracket, and they're not particularly, well, they're not rare, but they're not common. But they're not exactly, they're most common Mark 1s, but in hindsight, they're getting thin. Because there was 292,000 Zetec petrol manuals first registered in the UK between 98 and 2005. Absolutely ridiculous. And that's where we are with Mark 1s now. That's probably the biggest data that I can give you to show where Mark 1s are. They are minuscule from what they were. In terms of the others, CL petrols, under 2,000 of them left. LXs, I'm afraid LX petrol manuals have gone down the most, and that is the most eye-opening data of this whole Q3. We have lost 2,000 LXs off the road. 2,000 LX petrol manuals gone. It was 10,000, now it's just over 8,000. 2,000 gone, wiped off. Gears, we've lost 1,000 of them. They've gone from 10,000 to 9,000 petrol manual gears. That's it. We've lost equal number of Zetecs, and there's about 1,500 Zetecs that have come off. So the majority of cars that leave the roads are those three specifications. LX, Zetec, Gear, petrol manuals tend to be the worst, and they are because they're most common. ST170s, we've lost about 90 of them, but 30 of them have gone unsawn. Now that could mean that 30, majority of them are going to be going for scrap, or some of them are being restored, which is very possible at the moment. But I'm not recording any of that, it's just something I've noticed. But they've gone down to 1,763. I've got a feeling there'll probably be only 1,000 of them left by the time they've bottomed out in about 3 or 4 years' time. Probably 4 or 5, saying that. So the other rarity is the bi-fuel models, the 1.8 Zetec bi-fuel LPG. There are 37 of them. We've lost a few LXs and Gears, but the majority of them remain Zetecs with 21 of them. but they're very rare, and I don't know if anybody's got one. Very, very rare indeed. So in a grand total, the last data shows Q2 2023. Now, if you remember what I said last time, the numbers left on the road back then was 61,592 approximately. This is approximate, give or take about 100, I would say. So let's say 61,500 or 600 to be sure. And that was a percentage drop of 6.1% versus the last time I recorded it. So quite, an average drop. And I thought, well, that's an average drop, but it looks a bit more favourable because the percentage drop is what tells me what's going on. Because remember, as less Mark 1s are left on the roads, the percentage, but the number left will decrease. So, 2 years ago when I started this, it was quite common to have about 8,000 come off the road. 8,000, 9,000 were coming off the road every quarter. Now, as I can tell you now, we have lost 5,500 in the last 3 months. 5,500. So you're thinking, oh, so they're not decreasing as much now. No, they're decreasing less in numbers. Well, that's the way it's perceived to be because there's less of them. As there's less of them, there's less to come off the roads. So it's like that. It's slowing down only fractionally because of that factor. But the percentage decrease is quite alarming. So to go from 61,000 to 56,000, or 550,000 approximately have come off the roads, that is a decrease of 9%. Excuse me a second, I'll just say that again, 9%. In the 2 years I've been doing this, it has never hit 9%, ever. Never. That is the biggest decrease of Mark 1s that I've seen ever. And it just strikes me that they are unfortunately leaving the roads at an astronomical rate and they're not slowing down. It doesn't look like they're slowing down. My graph is not telling me that. They are coming off the roads quicker than ever. And my prediction at this moment, 2024 January, about 51,000. I would say about 51,000, give or take a few hundred each way. And that is nothing compared with what was on the roads. Shall I tell you that? If I haven't said this before, the total number of Mark 1s registered in the UK, about 780,500, give or take a few hundred, maybe 500 each way. Maybe 781, maybe 780. That's it. That was that was quite a lot of cars, considering it was only a 7-year production, 7 years of being sold in Europe, the UK, I should say. That's quite a high number. That's almost 100,000 a year. The current amount of registered, which is just over 56,000, is 7.1% of what was first registered in the UK. That is it. That is a drop in the ocean. It's becoming even more of less of a drop in the ocean. So that is a stark reminder to people that Mark 1 Focuses are drastically coming off the roads. I said this a year ago and 2 years ago, and it still remains to be. Unfortunately, too many of them are being scrapped that I'm witnessing that shouldn't be scrapped. Somebody scrapped a Mark 1 on another group, and I jumped in at the thread. I was furious. He's getting rid of the car because the clutch has gone, and he's been offered another one for less than the cost of the clutch. Goodness me, you must be doing very well because most people can't afford to do that. And he was scrapping it. I jumped in and said, why don't you sell it? And he said, well, it's worth more in spares. I'm sorry, that's why there won't be many Mark 1s in the future. And the people that have got their brains switched on and are putting their Mark 1s away and are looking after them and are using them less, tell you what, you guys, you're going to be sitting on an absolute goldmine. Because from what I've seen, the Mark 1 is very well liked and represented now within the media. I think there's a lot of positivity, more positivity towards that car than ever. And I honestly believe that this is going to be a bit of a goldmine of a car for those who've got a good one, a really good one. because the way people continue to use them and treat them, even for people, very sadly, who couldn't care a damn about the car, they are actually causing your car to be more valuable by scrapping perfectly good cars and breaking them, because there's more money in them in parts, which is why I want them to be worth more. Because when they're worth more, less people start doing that, and they start thinking, well, hold on, that's worth more, that is. It'll be one of them cars, I honestly believe, in 4 or 5 years' time, where people will think, I should have kept mine, but they didn't. In conclusion, where does that leave us? Well, where do I think it's going? I honestly believe, by looking at all these numbers, and I said this 12 months ago, I believe these numbers will start bottoming out in 2 years' time. From now, 2 years' time. 2025 is the year that the numbers will start to slow down. But they'll still go down. But those percentages should, on average, go down. We could be seeing 4 or 5%. That could be the possibility, but they'll still go down. And they will continue slowing from that year. But I think we've got another 2 years of this left, where we're going to see 7, 8, 9% decreases. And if that continues, well, on this basis, we're probably looking at about 30,000 Focuses left by the end of 2024. That is so alarming. By the end of this year, we could be left with 30, I'd say 35 actually, saying that. Probably about 35 actually. I think 30 is too much. Probably 30 at the end of 2025. Definitely, but maybe 35, maybe 40, but no more than that. There'll be less than 40,000 left by the end of this year, guaranteed. Probably around 37,000. Let's see if my prediction of 37,000 holds true. I'll write that down on here and see how good my prediction is, because that's what it's telling me, unfortunately. And on that really depressing note, I'm going to leave you to think about whether, if you have a Mark 1, whether you want to keep it long term or get a better version or whatever you want to do. Or if you haven't got a Mark 1, whether you need to jump on the boat. I suggest you do jump on the boat, because the boat will be sailing in 2 years' time. You've got a bit of time, but you need to get a good one. I always argue, and I've said this before, get a good one in the next 12 months, because after that, it's a lottery ticket. Take care, guys. See you very soon.